For joining us this afternoon. Let me start by saying this. I do not take this executive action lightly. I would have preferred to work in a more collaborative approach. I would have preferred to do the work with our allies in City Council to pass legislation ultimately. And we were doing that. We were doing just that. But some of the leaders who we are working with are standing behind me today. But unfortunately, we do not have the luxury of time. We have received credible reports that we have days, not weeks, before our city sees some type of militarized activity by the federal government. It is unclear at this time what that will look like exactly. We may see militarized immigration enforcement. We may also see National Guard troops. We may even see active duty military and armed vehicles in our streets. We have not called for this. Our people have not asked for this. But nevertheless, we find ourselves having to respond to this. Let me be absolutely clear. Although we believe the reports we have received are highly credible, this is an erratic, impulsive administration, and it is not always possible to understand and know exactly how he will move. He could change his mind, he could reverse course. In fact, I encourage him to do that. But still, we take these threats seriously, and we find ourselves in a position where we must take immediate, drastic action to protect our people from federal overreach. I'm signing an executive order today that will launch the Protecting Chicago initiative. This is a project that builds on the months of preparation that we have done that has led up to this very moment. Protecting Chicago will ensure that every Chicagoan knows their rights, that every single family is prepared, and every part of city government is directed to protect the people of Chicago from federal action.
All right, so check this out. In the world of politics, you got these crazy showdowns, right? A city versus the feds, but nothing gets as wild as what went down in Chicago back in 2020, because you had President Trump on one side basically demanding cities follow federal immigration law, and on the other, you had Mary Lori Lightfoot, who just drew a line in the sand, looked the White House dead in the eye, and told them to get lost. So she even put out this statement saying her order was a statement of our values. Really? Your values, because this is the story of how that defiance played out. How Chicago's mayor signed orders to basically turn the city's own police into a shield for undocumented immigrants, blocking federal agents from doing their job. And it was a straight up refusal to cooperate with the president's policies. And it brings up a serious question: who is a city supposed to protect? The federal government laws, or the people living there, even if they're illegally? If they're there illegally. It's insane. So to get what's happening, you got to understand Chicago's whole story with this sanctuary city thing, because it's a term they love to throw around. Sounds nice and protective, but it's been a political mess for decades. And it started back in the 80s with churches taking in people from Central America. And then in 1985, Mayor Harold Washington made it official policy. And he signed the order telling city workers, including cops, that they couldn't ask people about their immigration status or work with federal immigration. So the idea they sell you is simple. If undocumented people are scared of the police, they won't report crimes, and that makes everyone less safe. So that's the official story. And the goal was to build trust and make it seem like the Chicago PD isn't in the business of immigration enforcement. But let's be real, this policy has been a political football ever since. Some mayors beefed it up, or others weakened it, because in 2020 or 2012, I should say, not 2020, 2012, they locked it into law with something called the Welcoming City Ordinance, and it was all about sending a message. The ordinance said cops couldn't arrest people just because of their immigration status, but this whole identity got put to test when Donald Trump won in 2016. Now, President Trump's entire platform was built on getting the immigration under control, and he looked at these sanctuary cities and saw exactly what they are: places that breed crime and undermine the rule of law. And he made it a mission to crack down on them, threatening to pull billions in federal money from any city that refused to work with ICE. And the talk was nonstop. And Trump was always signaling out Chicago, calling it a killing field of crime and chaos, a narrative that honestly wasn't that far off from what was happening on the ground. And he'll post about the deadly weekend in Chicago, saying the people were desperate for me to stop the crime. And the message was crystal clear: to get in line or pay the price. And the administration's border czar, Tom Homan, even announced they were going to ramp up enforcement, specifically in sanctuary cities like Chicago. And he said, I quote, "You can see a ramp up of operations in Chicago. Absolutely. We know for a fact they're releasing public safety threat illegal aliens to the streets every day." So for Mayor Lori Lightfoot, these threats were an assault on the city's values. And isn't it funny how protecting criminals becomes a value? And she positioned herself as the big defender of immigration communities, or immigrant communities, I meant to say. And the pressure from the feds just pushed her to double down. As Lightfoot put it, they upset some people, but it wasn't the only moral choice. A moral choice to do what exactly? Because she's saying it was the only moral choice, but this was the stage set for a total showdown, if you ask me. So the standoff hit its peak when Lightfoot decided to go all in, and she didn't just talk, she signed executive orders to build a firewall between her police and federal immigration agents. And this wasn't just for show, because these orders were legally binding. And first, she banned the Chicago Police Department from helping ICE with any immigration raids: no joint operations, no sharing resources. Second, the orders cut off ICE access to police databases, and cops couldn't even arrest someone on administrative warrant from immigration. Third, she made it illegal for city officials to let ICE agents talk to anyone in city custody. So basically, the entire city law enforcement system was officially off limits to ICE. And if the feds wanted to do raids in Chicago, they were on their own. And this was a direct counter to the Trump administration. While the White House was threatening to send in agents to make the streets safer, Mayor Lightfoot was using her own police force as a human shield for the city's undocumented population. And then her administration tried to spin this as a public safety issue. And they claimed that when local cops got involved or get involved in immigration, trust is lost. And it's one of the biggest finesses of all time, because, you know, I've talked about this, how they use these talking points to justify policies that make no sense. And they argue it. They argue it. They argue is they argue it, and they let officers, they argue, how can I put this? They argue it so it lets their officers focus on real crime, but what they're really doing is creating a safe space for people who broke the law to get in here in the first place. And it was a dangerous political gamble that turned into a policy disagreement, into a direct conflict on the streets. So the result of Lightfoot's orders was this tense, phony peace. The Trump administration kept up the tough talk, but the federal courts kept blocking them from pulling funding. And then legal fights basically said the feds couldn't force local cops to act as immigration agents. But the debate kept going and kept going. And critics like me, I'm pointing out the obvious. These policies protect criminals and undermine federal law. And the Justice Department under Trump said Chicago's refusal to share information just makes the crime problem worse. And of course, you have studies out there claiming sanctuary city policies don't increase crime, or even that they make things better. And it is the biggest crock of bull crap that we ever seen in our entire life. So for her supporters, Lightfoot's defiance was a big win for human rights. And they argue building trust is better than deportation. And during the pandemic, she doubled down again, signing an order to make sure city relief funds went to everyone, regardless of immigration status. Even though many were excluded from federal aid, she said no one gets left out or no one gets left behind. And Lightfoot's time as mayor is over now, but these policies are still there. So her successor, who you see on the screen right now, Mayor Brandon Johnson, the guy who's facing a massive budget deficit in Chicago, and can keep the city safe in Chicago, has promised to keep Chicago a welcoming city. But it's funny, isn't it? Because the city's actions become a model for other liberal mayors who saw the federal government trying to enforce the law as an abuse of power. So, look, this whole clash between Chicago and the Trump administration was more than just politics because it's a defining moment in this whole fight over immigration states' rights and what justice even means anymore. And it forces you to ask, should local cops be an arm of the federal government or should they be guardians for everyone in the city no matter how they got there? And that's just what it is. But I'll continue and let him speak a little bit more, and then I'll add a little bit more context. And I want to get you guys' thoughts down in the comments below.
This sweeping executive order directs our Department of Law to pursue any and every legal mechanism to hold this administration accountable for violating the rights of Chicagoans. This order affirms that the Chicago Police Department will not collaborate with military personnel on police patrols or civil immigration enforcement. We will not have our police officers, who are working hard every single day to drive down crime, deputized to do traffic stops and checkpoints for the president. This order affirms the CPD officers will be directed to wear CPD uniforms and refrain from wearing masks so that residents can clearly distinguish them from federal agents. And finally, as I said, it establishes the Protecting Chicago Initiative, the most sweeping campaign of any city in the country to protect ourselves from the threats and actions of this out-of-control administration.
Interesting.
We will protect our Constitution, we will protect our city, and we will protect our people. We do not want to see tanks in our streets. We do not want to see families ripped apart. We do not want grandmothers thrown into the back of unmarked vans. We don't want to see homeless Chicagoans harassed or disappeared by federal agents. We don't want to see Chicagoans arrested for sitting on their porch. That's not.
And this is what they do. They take extreme examples like Chicagoans being arrested on a porch. Why would they be arrested if they're not doing nothing wrong? So this is how extreme they go. And you have to remember, this mayor got into office in the year of 2023 around May. Mayor Brandon Johnson, who's speaking now. But Lori Lightfoot, she was in office from 2019 to 2023. So this guy only been in here for 2 years. I mean, he's already done this much damage. And you have to look at the orders and the policies that have been put in place before Mayor Brandon Johnson, because it's playing out the same way with him, because we know that these liberals have the same playbook. And the story of Mayor Lightfoot's defiance is a perfect example of how backwards things have gotten in modern American politics, because it shows the crazy pressure on cities that choose to resist federal law and just how divided this country is, because the battle over sanctuary cities is nowhere near over. It's still a flashpoint, a symbol of the struggle between local control and federal law. And as the political scene keeps changing, what happened in Chicago and what's happening is a reminder that sometimes the biggest political moves don't come from DC, but from a city hall and a leader who decides they won't surrender their ideology, even if it means surrendering the safety of their streets and local Chicagoans, and trying to say, oh, even local Chicagoans who get arrested on their porch, we don't want to see. And the real question is for all of us is, was this a necessary act to protect people, or was this a dangerous political stunt that broke the rule of law? Because why would you not want safer streets?
Not who we are as a city, and that's not who we are as a nation. My team and I have spoken with the governor, the county president, and with our federal delegation, and we are in complete alignment. The time for action is now. With that, I will sign this executive order and then return for follow-up questions.
And there you have it. So, look, let me know what you guys think, especially if you live in Illinois or the Chicago metropolitan area. Let me know what you think about this whole situation. I'm going to keep bringing you guys more news and more visibility about what's happening. But man, this is wild because it has to ask you, how can you fight and resist the protection of not only Chicagoans, but American citizens' safety and jeopardize it by playing political games because you have the Donald Trump syndrome, right? You have this personal vendetta against Donald Trump just because he's Donald Trump, right? And well, Donald Trump derangement, not syndrome. And it asks you, what is the real underlying reason? Why? Because at the end of the day, illegal immigrants who Donald Trump is now removing from the census, which the census counts how many American individuals or how many individuals are in America. And also, when you realize that these public officials in their seats, they know based off the census how many individuals are in America, rather illegal or illegal citizens, American citizens, or legal citizens in America, they can use that as well as using and propping up illegal immigrants as a way to throw them a bone. And it's a way in translation for them to get voted back in or to hold power. Because if they throw these illegal immigrants a bone who come from nothing and want an opportunity, but they're not here doing it the right way out of respect for the country, they look at it as though, okay, we'll be a city that will respect your human rights. But what is it right to disrespect the rule of law? Because everywhere there has to be law and order for things to flow more fluently and more properly or appropriately, so things won't get out of line. So safety and things in regards to resources and things that the city or any state become blessed with and have federal funding receive can actually be rightfully so allocated to those who are legal citizens and deserve to be allocated to. And according to how it should be allocated to, how allocated and how the money should be given, because obviously the money is from an American government entity such as the federal government. So you will only think that it will go to Americans. But you have sanctuary cities. They're sanctuary cities for a reason because they prop themselves up to basically be for illegal immigrants as a way, throwing them a bone in favor. If I do this for you to help you in favor by protecting you and your human rights, but you don't have no rights because you're not legal, but they make them feel entitled to have human rights. And it's only a way to basically prey on these illegal individuals to keep them in power. And in translation, just to keep it short, you do me a favor, you scratch my back, I scratch your back. I'll fight for you. You stay in my city, you vote for me, I stay in power. And let me know what you guys think on that. No family, peace.